This conference is being recorded.
And we're on.
Excellent. Well, as you know, Russ, I'm LJ Bell, and I host a couple of radio shows in the Rockland area, Rockland, Maine area. It's a little low-power community station called WRFR. And the two shows that I host are two very different shows. One is called Destination Maine, which basically focuses on talking with people who are bringing something to the community that's worth sharing and that benefits the community. So it's a pretty broad spectrum. And my plan for our conversation tonight is to be able to use it on this upcoming Destination Maine show this Friday night, or this next Friday morning. And I'm also going to be interviewing Dane Wigington live on that broadcast. So if anybody misses anything from this, at least this hour of our conversation, I'd like to invite you to be able to listen to that later. We can give all the information for that later on. Decided that Russ and I decided that we would do things this way simply because it's easier for Russ to schedule, since he's on the west in a place where sleep is an issue, and I didn't want him to have to feel like he's sitting up in the middle of the night just to be on the air and then losing sleep. So that's not good. So this is the way we decided to do it. And I think the reason I wanted to talk to Russ was because Russ and I have something in common, and that is that we have both gone through our own individual health gauntlet, for, I guess, lack of a better term. And that's basically the reason I wanted to talk to Russ tonight. And so, Russ, if you could kind of give me some background as to, first of all, what you do, and how did your health start to tank the first time? What happened?
Well, the first time that it tanked was back in 1995. Between 1995 and 2000, my health just started declining rapidly all of a sudden, and I had no idea what was going on. And after 5 years of educating myself about herbs and trying to keep my energy up, and finding thyroid problems and candida issues and fatigue, terrible fatigue and nausea and tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears, and bruxism, which is grinding your teeth, horrible sleep problems. It took me 2 hours every night to get to sleep. It just got worse and worse. Finally, in 2000, through a friend of mine, Amy, revealed to me that my fillings have mercury in them, and that she had had chronic fatigue for 5 years and went from one doctor to another and went on one prescription after another and found no help. Then she started doing her own research and found out about the mercury in the fillings, had some of them removed. She was bedridden, couldn't work, and she, after having a few fillings removed, was able to get up out of bed and go back to work. And I was like,
okay, so when she tells you this, when she says this, were you, after this 5-year process of, trying to figure out what in the world is going on, did you think she was a little nuts?
Not at all, no. It's funny because
for a
solution. It actually, as soon as she said it, it was just a few seconds, and I realized it was the answer that I've been looking for 5 years, because it all made sense. Because I was having metallic taste in my mouth, and I was almost throwing up after every meal in 2000. That's how bad it had become. And when she said that, it was like I kind of winced my eyes and looked at her and scowled a little bit, like, "Are you serious?" And she told me her story, and while she was telling me her story, I was kind of going through in my mind all of the things I've been through, and it all started making sense. And I was like, that is the answer I've been looking for. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And after you come through all that struggle, when you've gotten something that just clicks, it feels really good, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Oh, it gave me a new hope because I was always very, I was athletic and would play racquetball and cycle and was very fit and healthy and active. And I was to the point where I worked 4 hours a day and had to sleep and take naps when I couldn't sleep at night, could hardly function. I thought I was in the last few years of my life. So it gave me new hope. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, and okay, so you got new hope, and you figured out that it's because of what's going on in your mouth. I mean, how do you explain that? What's that about?
Well, when she said that the fillings had mercury in there, I knew mercury was poisonous. And I know that if you have any metal like that in a volatile environment where you have physical physical abrasion on the metals, you have an assault of all kinds of substances and chemicals and substances in the body, that some of that mercury is going to escape. So it just made sense
Where
to
does it
me.
go?
It goes in two places. Most of it goes in your gut because you'll swallow most of it, and some of it gets inhaled because the fillings off gas mercury vapor. So it goes in your body and it likes to go into your brain and your central nervous system and your heart, and likes to steal your valuable minerals, like iodine and magnesium and zinc and other minerals. And it just causes havoc because it interferes with sulfur metabolism, which most of your proteins in your body have sulfur. So it just interrupts every body system in countless ways. It's horrendous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, pause there for a second. Let's talk about that sulfur business. Why is that crucial to your body?
Well, sulfur, there's an amino acid called cysteine, which is in most of the proteins in your body, and cysteine is a sulfur-bearing amino acid. And in order for those proteins to be built, you have to have sulfur available in order to make the amino acids and then in order to make the proteins. And if you have too little sulfur available, then that metabolism does not work. So this is especially important. This is why we have arthritis, for instance. One of the reasons, anyway, is you have your joints, your ligaments are very, very dependent on lots of sulfur, and that's why people take MSM because that's a sulfur molecule for joints.
Okay.
Or glucosamine. And so when you don't have the sulfur available, you start having problems with protein metabolism, and it affects everything.
And so that produces the low energy and the fatigue and the host of other symptoms. Is that connection that your body's missing from the sulfur?
Well, the sulfur produces a lot of things, but because the mercury binds to iodine, you can be taking in enough iodine in your body. Just as an example, this is just one example of one mineral, but it'll never get used because it gets bound to mercury and then it gets disposed of. And so you can actually have iodine starvation, be starving your thyroid of iodine, which is crucial, but still have a good diet. Same thing with magnesium, same thing with zinc, same thing with selenium. These are all very critical, very important metals. So you have a whole host of diseases and ailments that are associated with low zinc, with low magnesium, with low iodine, with low sulfur, and each one of those presents a whole host of diseases and ailments that come from that malnutrition.
Okay. And so, all right, so once you took responsibility and, you stood up for yourself health-wise and said, I'm going to take care of myself and I'm going to do something about this, what was your plan of attack?
Get the fillings out. Very first thing I wanted to do is get the fillings out of my mouth. So I went online and started researching. I found a woman's story who posted her story about amalgam, and that just confirmed what my friend Amy said. I found Hal Huggins' office. Now, Hal Huggins is the author of the book, of the book, It's All in Your Head, which is all about amalgam fillings. And he has an office. And so I called that office, and the woman said, before you get your fillings out, you need to read our book. I'm not trying to sell you books, but you need to understand and make an educated decision. So I'm like, okay. So I went and found the book in South Tampa. I lived in Florida at the time. And bought it and read it cover to cover over the next 2 days, and then made the decision they're coming out. So I found a good dentist that followed the safety protocols that were in the book. So it was a good thing I read the book, and had them out within about 3 weeks.
Okay. So once you had these out, how did your life change?
It was the most dramatic change I've ever experienced in my life. The night I had the fillings out, I had the best night's sleep I'd ever had in my life. Normally, for the previous 5 years, it was taking me 2 hours a night to get to sleep. If I woke up in the middle of the night, I may never get back to sleep. I would wake up every morning more exhausted than I went to sleep. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. I would feel worse in the morning. I had 17 physical symptoms. I had emotional fears, phobias, depression. In fact, my depression went on since my fillings were in my early teens, first put in. And all of the I'd say 80% of the physical symptoms were gone overnight. The remaining 20% of the symptoms were gone in 3 months. And within 4 or 5 months, the depression, all the physical, all the emotional symptoms, the fear of speaking, the fear of confrontation, the trouble making commitments, all of that stuff that I've lived with that you blame teenagers for, they put these things, this amalgam in teenagers' mouths, and wonder, why are they getting lazy? Why are they tired? Why are they becoming defiant? And they say, oh, it's hormones. Well, after my feelings were removed, all this stuff went away. And, 4 months later, overnight, I was 80% better. 4 months later, I felt like Superman. I never knew you could feel so good. And I finally had that answer to my question in my mind. I'd always ask myself, why are all these people so successful? They're so strong. They can speak publicly. And what's wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And that's what it is. That's what it was.
Wow. So, all right, you had a period of how long of this changed health, like, wow, Shangri-La, I'm at the top of Mount Everest, yeehaw, life is great. How long was that?
4.5 years. And then it all started going downhill again. It was in November 2005 when the chemtrail jets started crisscrossing the sky. And I saw this happen because I work from my home and I work out of my office, and I had a view of the sky and of the whole town of Jamestown, a wonderful place where I wish I could still live, but I can't because of the spray. And these jets started crisscrossing the sky, leaving trails. And I know, because I've been a lifelong sky watcher, and as a child I was interested in rockets and jets, and I collect pictures and read every book on it, and could tell you every U.S. fighter jet, and could tell you what the commercial jets were called and who made them. And I knew that jet engines don't produce trails. So I knew something was wrong, but what really, really nailed it into the ground for me was, after this crisscrossing started, about 30 to 40 minutes later, I would taste metal, salty, metallic taste in the air, and my sinuses would start burning. I would get a headache, racing thoughts, joint and muscle pain, terrible fatigue, heart pain, to the point where I couldn't function normally. And this would all come on in a matter of a few minutes. And as an example, I used to have employee meetings, because I had 3 employees at the time. And I used to have employee meetings in the afternoon, maybe, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is when they started spraying. That was the original schedule. And I had to cancel them all the time. In fact, the first day we started our meeting, and I said, I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I can't even focus or function. I am in so much pain right now. I had to cancel it. And that's when the new chapter of my life started.
And that must have been just devastating.
That must have been what? I'm sorry?
I can imagine that you must have been devastated to be feeling this way once again.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just so frustrating that, looking back on my life, that all of the suffering that I've been through has virtually been caused by things that never should have been, things that were implemented by government policies and they never should have happened. They never should have happened.
Well, but just even the overall health aspect of it. Now there's something that is happening that has a say on how your body feels.
Yeah.
It's not you that has that say.
Yeah.
It's outside of you.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I'm coming from a place, to just give people a little bit of a background, I'm coming from a place where at 35 years old, an administrative law judge looked at me in the eye and said, Miss Dell, I'm sorry that you are so young and you are so very sick, and I hope that you can, you know, take these 3 years and this disability and come back and heal, because you're just too young to have this be how your life's going to be. And it took 6 years, and it was a hand over hand pulling myself up out of the hole of quicksand, regaining my health one foothold at a time. So I especially can relate to your, you know, your health journey there, and that just how devastating that must have felt. It's like, doggone it, I thought I had lit this crap. What's up with this? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And I knew the first day that I had seen the trails, you know, before, a few months before, but they weren't crisscrossing the sky on a daily basis. They were just here and there. And I was just scowling, you know, saying, what is going on with it? Is there an air show over the town, the city, or what's going on? I've never seen. But I knew the first day, because when the trails appeared and crisscrossed and covered the sky, because they literally saturate the sky till it was a whiteout, and I started tasting and smelling, the symptoms always coincided with it. So there was no question. There's no question where the symptoms were coming from. And yes, it was. So it's very frustrating to have no control over it.
Yeah, yeah. So what did you decide to do after that? What happened next? I mean, you're between a rock and a hard place here.
Well, I wanted to know what was going on and if other people knew about it. So I got on the internet and started searching for trails in the sky. And immediately I found the concept of geoengineering and chemtrails. And people all over the world were starting to see this occur. In some places, it had been going on for years. And yeah, so I found out that this was going on. My next step, of course, was to try to filter it out of the air. So I went through this phase where I spent a lot of money on air filtration equipment and tried one air filter after another, and finally ended up building my own, just to find out that, except with the exception of the ones that I built, they basically don't work. So it was just another dead end for me.
Okay, so hang on a second. We just transitioned from you're educating yourself about geoengineering, and you're learning about all of the things that are attached to the spoke of the center hub of this big giant wheel.
Right. Yeah, that's the first thing I did, is educated myself about it online. A lot of people were talking about it. I wanted to understand what it was all about. Nobody had any clear answers. There were a few researchers who had done some research and said that they were nanoparticles, that they had done some research on the substances that they were finding in the dust and in the ground or in the rainwater, and that it was nanoparticle sized stuff, metals. And of course that made sense to me because I could taste metal when they sprayed. And so I did a pretty quick education. By nature, I'm kind of a researcher, and so I really started putting the pieces together pretty quickly and realized that this wasn't something we were going to go knock on the government's door and say, please stop, and it was going to stop. It was something that I was first going to have to try to deal with personally to make myself functional, physically functional. And then something was going to have to be done politically. But my first step was to educate myself as much as I could. And that happened pretty quickly.
This sounds like a blessing and a curse.
Well, I think that the blessing that can come out of this in the long run really is that people are going to wake up to the corruption that has been going on for a long time. that's the way I look at it, as a blessing. It's not a personal blessing so much in that, um, you know, but I think it can be a wake up call for people, But as far as I'm concerned, it's daily suffering. It's spending money on supplements to mitigate the symptoms. It's being strict with diet. It's tough. It's tough.
What kind of things are you doing in your diet to help with this stuff? Again, and let's shift to practical application. What are you doing in your life? Because when I think about all the things that I do, if I had to sit down and if I had to fill out a form for disability today, it would take me 2 weeks to fill the form out, because everything in my life revolves around the workarounds that I do to function. And some of those dominoes get out of whack more often than others. So there's a protocol of things that I know to do to bring myself to a better state of healing. Is there a protocol for your life now with these chemtrails?
Absolutely. Yeah, there is. There is. The protocol is pretty broad because the particulates that are being dropped on us are very broad in scope. There are several different kinds of metals. There are obviously some other chemicals involved. And so the symptoms are varied. So there is a protocol, and it involves a lot of herbal supplementation. It involves limiting fats for a very specific reason. It involves limiting sugar, those kinds of things. So I have to watch my diet, and I have to do a lot of supplementation. Some of the supplementation I have to do, for instance, is for thyroid. Uh, uh, I have to supplement to support, for instance, magnesium. I need magnesium, iodine. These kinds of things help because I believe they're depleted by the things that I'm breathing in, and because they're nanoparticles, because these particulates are so small, they go right through your lungs into your bloodstream. So they're like a virtual vaccination. They're like you're getting toxic metals injected right into your body. So it just couldn't be worse. The fact that they're nanoparticles makes it even harder because they have a lot of surface area. The smaller a particle is, the more reactive it can be because it has more surface area, and these particles can go through your body and bind to things. So it just kind of makes the whole situation that much worse. But it's just one of those situations where where I have to mitigate by following a tight diet, by taking. In fact, on my desk right here, I've got about 30 supplements. You should see my bedroom. There's a lot there. Now it seems that I think we've lost the audio for LJ, but hopefully she'll be back here in just a second. But I'll just fill in the space here before we get her back with talking about how one of the things that is really surprising to me is how the symptoms are related to mercury toxicity, how similar they are. And in fact, across the United States, we have, and this has been in mainstream media since I've seen it since the mid 2000s, is we have mercury levels in soils that are rising. Of course, we have aluminum and barium levels that are rising as well. And so everybody is scratching their head saying, well, where is all of this metal coming from? And because we can look at the patents that have been used in geoengineering and in spraying these chemtrails in the sky, because we can look at these things and these patents and see that they planned on using barium and aluminum for these things. I have to take supplements that will support me against those kinds of things. Were we able to get your audio back, LJ? It's funny because I can see you see your audio bouncing on the console. Let me try something here and see if this will help. Can you speak now and see if we can hear you? Okay, let me try once again. Can you hear me there, LJ? Okay, what about now? Well, it's one of those technically. Oh, excuse me a second. We have a disconnection on the phone here, so hold on just a sec.
Your dietary, your practical stuff, what you were doing practically to deal with chemtrails. And we were talking about diet and other things. Can you remind me what we were talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. We were. I have to take a lot of supplements to mitigate the symptoms of the stuff that we're spraying in that's coming out of these jets. And so I'm doing things like replenishing sulfur. A lot of minerals get depleted, so I've got to take lots of magnesium, lots of potassium. Barium, for instance, which is one of the metals that is being sprayed, depletes potassium in the body. And if your potassium gets low enough, then you actually you can have a heart attack, which happened to me in 2011 as a direct result of all things point to barium. And so I have to take a lot of supplementation like magnesium, like potassium, and a lot of herbs, enzymes. Enzymes are prohibited, are are kind of prohibited by some of the chemical reactions of these metals. Also, the immune system is suppressed by barium and aluminum, which are two of the components, plus mercury suppresses the immune system. So we've got a lot of immune suppression going on. So there's just, those are some of the quick examples, but there's just, my whole desk is just full of supplements here that I have to take in order to stay functional.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what are you doing dietary wise? Are there specific things, in your diet that you're doing, or?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of common sense things. I eat a lot of organic vegetables. In fact, I had a big salad this afternoon with lots of vegetables, beets and other raw organic vegetables. Um, that's very important. I limit sugar. I allow myself to cheat at times because I've got to have my fun, but I have to limit sugar quite a bit. I have to limit caffeine. Caffeine really makes tinnitus worse, as does sugar, and I believe we know the reasons why. Science doesn't know, but there are some theories that are not well known yet as to why that is. And I drink a lot of water. I have a protein supplement. I have a green drink supplement. All of these things are adding minerals into my body, which are depleted by the minerals or by the metals that we're breathing that are coming from the jet spray. So dietary wise, it's pretty common sense. Organic vegetables are kind of the centerpiece of this kind of a diet.
And once you understand that, the difference between genetically modified and organic, I think it starts to dawn on us that, on many people, once they start making that connection, that, this is going into your body. I remember reading something that absolutely enraged me years ago, but it's so true. And when an oncologist, 90% of the time when an oncologist is diagnosed with cancer, the first thing they do is change their diet. The first thing. And this is after, however many years of practice of telling people, oh no, it has nothing to do with what you're eating. There's a lot of power in food that I think we don't recognize. There's a lot of in food. And eating the right things, making sure that there's no chemicals in it, making sure it's organic, can have a tremendous effect, but it can also have such a healing effect and actually bring you back from a place where, you're thinking you might die.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, food is what we're made of, essentially. Your body takes apart the components of food and utilizes them for every body process.
Yeah.
So, food is everything. Food is your medicine. Food is your sustenance in every way. So it's critical.
And it is critical. And the quality of that, one of the things that I learned in my process was that the quality of what I was putting in my body made a difference in how my body functioned. And, at my sickest point, I looked like something, I weighed about 95 pounds, and I looked like something out of Auschwitz. I was skin and bones and deathly pale and just walking dead. I looked and felt about 95. And it was, for me, organic, being able to choose organic foods and steer clear of chemicals and pesticides and things that are, violating your space and your body's sacred space, I guess, with smells or toxins or, any number of things that your body does not need. I personally had to clear all of that stuff out of my life and do a total 180, even with just food, but with everything across the board. Did you find that that's what you had to do as well?
Well, I didn't do it so dramatically. I actually started eliminating things and doing research and then adding other things in and kind of made somewhat gradualer changes. There were some things that were more abrupt, like lowering sugar and stuff like that. That was real important when I was going through all this at its worst, especially with Mercury. But I made a bunch of gradual changes over a relatively short period of time, so they weren't completely gradual. But the other thing, you mentioned about organic vegetables, and you don't hear this much, and I would love for people to know this, is that there was a study done, I believe, at the University of South Florida. I believe that's where it came from, USF, and they studied the mineral content of organic versus pesticide grown vegetables. And they found that the mineral content of organic vegetables was 10 to 100 times higher than the pesticide grown. I didn't say 10 to 100%, 10 to 100 times. And I have a whole sheet in my file somewhere that shows this. It's the difference in mineral content is dramatic. And as I did some research years ago on pesticides, one of the side effects you run into so often with that is it blocks mineral uptake for the plants.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And this is what you hear, when you hear about these people, these indigenous people who live all to be 100 or 120 years old. You start learning what is the common thread you see in their diet. Large mineral content. They're drinking glacial milk, which is just loaded with minerals. Glacial milk is the water that runs off of glaciers and down through rivers, and it picks up tremendous amounts of minerals along the way. It's very rich. They call it glacial milk because it's actually got a whitish color to it because it's just so loaded with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And these people are living to some of the longest ages in the world.
Mm-hmm. And actually, in places where that stuff is growing, food production is not exactly, life as we know it. Even in Maine, it's way, way different. They're drinking yak milk, or blood or whatever they're doing, but they're supplementing so much with minerals that, whatever they're eating, it's almost irrelevant. I know in the average, there is a place in Japan that I learned through my healing process. I believe it's Okinawa, where the average age of a woman there is 82. Average. And that's not because everybody's ancient there. It's simply because people live a long time because they're eating so many minerals in the sea vegetables there. That they are living a great, and their lifestyle is far more laid back. They don't really, in this place where they were talking about where the study was done, it's not a modern world sort of stress situation. So the researchers were putting those two factors together and saying, there's something to this. But minerals just seems to be, and I keep hearing this a lot. Now, tell me, all right, so when we're drinking, for example, just to connect the dots about the minerals, when we're drinking filtered water, does that have minerals in it?
Well, sure, yeah. You'll have some minerals in filtered water, yeah.
Some, but it probably doesn't have as much as what is coming from the ground.
No. No, I mean, if you're filtering your water, like RO, reverse osmosis is a filter process. It's a slow, very fine filter process, and that removes a lot of minerals. So you have very, very demineralized water. And in fact, I've got a parts per million water meter sitting here near my desk. And if you measure RO water, you'll see that the particulates in there are extremely low because you've taken out so much. But if you have well water that you're drinking, or glacial milk, if you can get your hands on that, they're just loaded with minerals. And this is the most important thing. When I grew up, it was vitamins. You know what I mean? Everybody preached to you vitamins. You got to have vitamins. Minerals. Vitamins are very important, of course, and they're critical, but vitamins are what drive most of the processes in your body. So we've got to have
minerals. Minerals drive this process?
Minerals drive those processes in the body. So they're they're the most important thing that we're taking in.
And I'm not remembering that that's something that the new food pyramid. I mean, just off the top of my head, it's not banging me over the head that that's something that they emphasize.
No, no, and I think the food pyramid and the food, even the USRDA levels, have been so poorly determined that you just can't rely on that. What we found in our research, and that's what our business does, is we research these types of things. You find out that really the USRDAs are ridiculously low, and so they're horrible at forming food pyramids because you're not getting the minerals. They're not giving you or recommending the types of foods that are going to get you the minerals that you really need.
Right.
It's just you have to take control of your health. You have to stop looking to the government or looking to some organization to help you. You've got to learn how this stuff works and what the truth is about it through good information. Find good information, and you'll start to change your lifestyle because you'll start learning a whole different set of information that will change the way you eat.
Absolutely, and then it makes it not worth it to cheat.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're absolutely, if you want to feel good, that's right. Especially in today's world.
You're gonna feel like crap.
That's right. Especially in today's world when you're getting bombarded with toxic metals that are stealing the good metals from your body. You've got to make sure you're eating right and doing the right things.
It does become crucial, and I think a lot of folks are. I know it seems like in Maine people care very, very much about food, and they also care very much about health. I know an article I wrote about the Common Ground Fair and the Mosca. We've got a fantastic organic farmers and growers association here in Maine, and as a part of what they do, as a part of what they have been doing for years, and that's part of why Maine is, I think, fourth in the nation as far as the availability of organic farms, food, CSAs, farmers markets, etc. We are higher in the ranking as far as the states are concerned than even California.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So, you landed in a state where people care about what's going in their bodies, and they care about what they're breathing. And we also have a huge proportion of, at least especially here where I'm at in the mid-coast, lots and lots and lots of healing modalities. People who are doing energy work and massage therapy and Reiki and aromatherapy and just 9 ways to Sunday. They're doing all these modalities. It's like you can find a practitioner of, if you can actually throw your imagination into gear and, come up with something wacky, I bet you there's somebody who does it here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just people are very conscious about healing, and they go to any length to reach that point, because that once you've lost your health and then you've come to a place where you've regained it, you recognize how much value it has in your life. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. That is one of the revelations that we have when we lose our health. Is how important it is. Without your health, you have nothing else.
Mm-hmm. And everything else falls away. Everything else, because you become so focused in just slogging through this minute, this hour, this day, that everything becomes like this little microcosm. It's like your little world revolves around just trying to get out of this quicksand pit for one day.
Oh yeah, and it's it comes with discipline. You have to care about your health. You have to take control of it. You have to learn to find good information, so you're not following the old information that is really not so good. But once you take control and you have that realization that you can control your health, it is life changing. It's very important.
Well, and I think it's important for people to understand that, because, it's not about what the status quo is going to try and convince you to do. I mean, for myself, I walked into the doctor's office with a list of 25 things. Okay, I'm doing this and this and this and this. And, 85% of them, he was like, oh, wow, that's cool. I didn't know that could be used for that. I was educating him. You feel like you're doing that with your practitioners and folks?
Oh, in fact, that's part of our business. We actually we collect research, actual medical university research, and rewrite it in such a way the public can understand it. And I've heard countless stories of people taking our research and going into their doctor, about an herb, for instance, and saying, "Well, I'm doing this." The doctor, "Oh, no, you don't want to do that." And the person will say, "Well, look at this page," and the doctor will sit there and read it and go, "Okay, well, I guess that's okay," because it's referenced, it has credibility behind it, it talks in scientific terms, and it's just a matter of educating the doctors. And when you do that, you start seeing them turn around. It's very rewarding to see that happen.
Mm-hmm. And, I'm just thinking about, as I've been learning about this issue, and I've only been learning about it since about end of January, it seems like such a monumental task to awaken the horde of doctors who believe in the system, and pharmacists who believe in the system, and bankers who believe in the system, and all these people who are a part of this. They don't realize that they're connected, and we're all in this little specialization mode here, but we're part of such a much bigger picture that's going on. What did you do when you started connecting the dots on the bigger picture of all this?
What did I do with what diet, or just what happened to me?
I mean, what happened? I mean, how did you handle this? It's overwhelming. Does it make you want to just crawl into a bunker and just say,
well,
I'm hiding for the rest of my life, or what do you do?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. In fact, I mean, I worked with a political party as a volunteer. It was a small minor party in Florida, because that's where I grew up, for a couple of years. When I wanted to get involved, I wanted to do something for our country, and this was a great group of people. And during that 2-year period, I learned about corruption. I learned about mainstream media. I learned about the disinformation that is put out by the government. I learned about people who are actually reversing huge diseases, but it's not getting any airplay, and the news media is ignoring it. I learned about all of this stuff in that 2-year period. And you said, does it make you want to crawl into a bunker? It took me 2 years to recover from that. I was so afraid and so, and this was before my amalgam fillings were out. I was still mercury toxic at this time, but I wasn't terribly, terribly sick like I had become in 1995. This was before all that, and I just kept continuing to learn and continuing to learn. But it is huge when you start to learn that the world isn't the way you were taught. It's really a much different place, and the truths that you've been taught, like you mentioned the food pyramid earlier, and nutrition, the things that we're taught in school, and the things that the government agencies tell us are just not solid information. It's not credible so much of the time. There's so much more to it. It's so watered down and diluted. So it's kind of like you said earlier, blessing and a curse. It's, you have your eyes open, and it's scary because you're for the first time walking on your own. Nobody's holding your hand anymore. But the blessing part of it is now you're in control. And the more you learn, the more you can take control of your health and of your life. So it's both. It's scary, but it's very rewarding when you start to really learn the truth about everything.
It's kind of like, kind of like when you discover that Santa Claus isn't exactly what your parents would have liked for you to believe, and perhaps how much of an investment my parents made to keep this little fantasy going. Okay, well, once I was aware of it, well, don't tell your brother, let him have,
Yeah, I hear you.
It's like, we're all tapped into this fantasy. It's like the whole economy, from October to December is all about this fantasy. And dude in the red suit is going to come and bring toys,
Yeah.
When you finally wake up and finally understand that this really isn't the way it is, and you're right all along, it's empowering. I remember feeling that way as a kid. It's empowering. Wow, I have the truth. I can tell my brother. I can tell him this stuff, or I can let him stay in the dark. Does that ring a bell at all for you?
Absolutely. I mean, from a principalistic point of view, lies divide people, and the truth brings people together. And that's exactly
Right.
what I hear you talking about, is you've got to keep secrets. When there's lies involved, you're keeping secrets from each other. And that divides your relationship. That lowers your intimacy that you have with someone on any level, and it breaks down the fabric of society, really. We have a situation today where we're trying to get people to wake up, and it's almost like a net. If that net is all torn everywhere, then the networking of people, the relationships that people have with each other, when it's weak, when it's torn, you can't be as functional. Society doesn't work so well, and
No.
yeah, and so it's absolutely essential that we return to truth, that we learn these things, we get people to realize what's really going on, even if it's a difficult transition. We have to be grown up enough to accept difficult truths. We have to be open-minded enough to say, well, I never believed that before. Well, maybe you've never studied it. Maybe we need to look at things that we haven't accepted previously, because they have been, systematically weaned out of the system for us. Well, maybe they should never have been weaned out of the system. Maybe we should have been taking herbs all along for our ailments, and maybe mainstream medicine should be the alternative rather than the other way around, for instance. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
So getting back to truth in all of these things can bring the network or fabric of society back together.
Mhm. Mhm. And so when you can resonate with your own personal truth and knowing, and there's a Native American concept about standing in your truth will be essentially your protector. You're free to operate with integrity as long as you're operating with the truth. It's so simple.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but, but not only that, but we're working so far outside the game today that we have forgotten that if you jump off the roof, you might hurt yourself. I mean, we're doing things like spraying metals into the air, thinking, oh, this is going to be good for us. We're putting metals, toxic mercury, in the teeth of children and adults, thinking that's good. I mean, it is so far outside of any logic and any sanity that it's hard sometimes for people who are just learning about this to believe that this is really going on.
It sounds like, when I first learned about this, that's exactly. I was just a person was asking about this stuff in a fisherman's forum, and all of the scientists in the room, it went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop for weeks, it seemed like, because he was actually addressing the fact that these guys were using all kinds of science speak to, gloss over and glaze over what's really going on, and they weren't really telling the truth. This person, lobsterman, he's pulling stuff up in his trap, and he's seeing stuff that doesn't look like lobsters, and he's a fourth-generation lobsterman. And he's out there on the bay and watching these planes spray. So that was my first encounter with chemtrails. And to be honest with you, I was like, well, he's kind of excited about this stuff. I wonder if there's something wrong.
Yeah.
wrong with him as a person, like is he schizophrenic, is he this or that?
Mm-hmm.
But no, he's passionate about this issue because he's banging his head against the wall because nobody's listening to him.
Yeah, been there.
Do you feel that way sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is I have been very familiar with the amalgam issue and therefore the mercury issue for a long time. Since 2005, I've been intimately connected with the chemtrail issue. I mean, for goodness sake, I can smell it and taste it. I have a very sensitive sense of smell and taste. I'm one of the small percentage of the population who has that. So for me, it's a daily burden. I taste it in the air as I sit here and speak to you. It was so strong this morning, it woke me up out of sleep a few times, and I go through that all the time. I wake up and my heart, my chest is hurting, and I know why, because it's that old familiar pain. But the problem is like I was talking about a little earlier, is that when the relationships between people have been distanced because their sense of truth has been diversified, or whatever you want to call it, the relationships are not as tight and close as they should be. People don't trust you. And so I can sit here and say to people, I smell and taste this stuff. I am a first-hand witness that there is something in the air that tastes like metal. It burns my sinuses. It makes me have inflammation. It has all the symptoms of aluminum. It has the symptoms of barium. It has the symptoms of mercury. It has the symptoms of strontium, and along with all the other evidence. But yet, like you were saying, banging your head against the wall, they just don't want to hear it. I think a lot of times today we have this problem where in society we feel like we're entitled to our own truth sometimes. We're entitled to go ahead and buy into the government's version of the truth, let's say, because it's easier and it's more comfortable. Because it's scary to think that maybe they're not telling you the truth, or maybe there's something really bad going on, and it's easier not to face it. But it's really the opposite is true. It's easier to face it in the long run. It may be easier not to face it in the short run, but we've got to face it if we're going to overcome. So yes, I have often for decades, as I have learned this in-depth information about these things, from mercury to chemtrails and geoengineering to countless issues, even cancer. There've been cancer in Canada. They have, what is it, DCA, which they're curing cancer in the universities up there, but the pharmaceutical companies won't touch this stuff. Why? Because it's going to ruin their profits. So yes, talk about banging your head against the wall. My head hurts.
Bless your heart. I'm sorry. Yeah. It is a very frustrating feeling, and I'm posting pictures on Facebook and doing things, and people are looking at me like, yeah, really, all day? That have to do with chemtrails, and it's like, okay, here we go. Let's risk looking like you've got 10 different sets of horns growing out of my head to bring awareness of this topic to people. But something, I've worked so hard to regain my health as well that I'm really not willing to lose it again. And I'm going to do whatever I can and let as many people know about this as I can. And people can, they can make their own decision. It is overwhelming. It is disheartening. It is a huge sense of betrayal. These people that we trust are untrustworthy. Here's what they're really doing.
Yeah.
How do you sleep at night knowing this? I mean, where is the hope in all of this? What do you see as a hopeful outcome for how we can, yes, we've addressed it. How do we deal with it? How do we fix it? What do we do?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, the hopeful outcome that I've seen is I've been in the herb industry for years now, where we do research on the herbs and supplements. And what has happened, and the general public may not be completely aware of this, but bill after bill has come out of Congress trying to ban supplements and herbs. And it's like every 6 months or something, some big bill comes down the line. And what happens is the herbalists and the people who know that this stuff is scientifically sound and it's critical for the health stand up. They flood the switchboard of Washington. They flood the fax machines. They write, they email, and they push back. And every time that the people have stood up together and pushed back, guess what? We won. They backed down. And this is the message that I try to share with people all the time today, especially about the geoengineering and chemtrails, is that if enough people would just get involved, become active, don't care what people think about you, because eventually you're going to be a hero. You're going to be respected as one of the early adopters, one of the people who were more concerned with truth than you were about what people thought of you. And that's a very respectable thing. So don't worry about that. But when we stand up together and we push back against these lies and against these practices that are harmful to our environment and to our bodies, we win. It's just a matter of having that hope, having that faith, making the decision, and then getting up out of your chair and getting involved in doing something. It can happen. It's just up to each individual person to do their little part.
Yeah, it is up to each.
And I really believe that. I hope you can. Hopefully you can tell.
I do. I can tell. I absolutely can tell. It reminds me of a quotation, something that Anais Nin said one time, and the quotation is, "And the day came when the risk that it took to remain tight in a bud became greater than the risk that it took to bloom." And we're in that time right now.
We are.
It's costing us so much to keep hiding and to keep our eyes closed about this.
Yes.
We need to bloom. We need to wake up and open our eyes and see how all this is connected.
Yes. Yes. My head is shaking yes right now.
Okay.
Vigorously.
I can hear your brain.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm telling you. Yeah, we do have to wake up. The risk, what is the risk? If people start making the connection, is your arthritis caused by your fillings? Is your dementia caused by the mercury that's leaching out of the red coloring used in dentures or your cosmetics? Is your cancer growing faster because of the estrogenic plastic coatings that are used in cans? Are your chronic headaches, your suppressed immune system, your chronic gut inflammation, your IBS because of the aluminum, the mercury, the strontium, the barium from the jets? All of these illnesses are coming from bad policy. And I shouldn't use the word all, but I would say a vast majority of these illnesses are coming from bad policy and disinformation or misinformation. And the good.
How much would be stopped? I'm just thinking of the pharmaceutical industry and how much of just that would come to a halt if this just stopped.
And
these guys must be in an absolute panic.
Yeah. See, that's the whole point. Because when people realize that you can take DCA or there are cures for cancer, if they realize that, if people believe that, and they try other things and they start working and they see this and the news is allowed to talk about it, because it's practically illegal to put the word cure and cancer in the same sentence today. People get locked up for making claims like that. So I'm not sitting here making specific claims, but I am sitting here saying that there is clinical, university, scientific research that there's a substance in Canada that actually shrinks tumors like something like 85 to 95% of the time dramatically and prevents growth of new ones. It's better than anything we're seeing from any other modern modality. And this is only one of at least half a dozen other things that have been around for decades. But they're not in mainstream media. They're not being able to be pushed. But why? Why are these things not being promoted? Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. If people knew what would happen to the pharmaceutical companies, they have billion, multi, 10, $100 billion industries, second only to oil in size, to defend. And if they want to stay alive, they have to control information. And so when you start doing your political research, you start seeing that these The people who control these large pharmaceutical industries are also heavily vested in mainstream media. You start connecting the dots and seeing the characters, and it makes sense. Of course, they have to be, because if you don't control information, then industries that are based on lies are going to fall, and they want to protect that industry. A lot could be said about that.
The thing is that there's so many people who are in, and if you just take the pharmaceutical industry for one thing. I mean, my great grandfather was a pharmacist in a little town in Alabama, and the doctor trusted him to make the right mix of compound the right medicine for his patients. The doctor would, it was a whole different system. Nowadays, I'm looking generationally. I've got a cousin who's a pharmacist. She has to do a 3-hour drive and have a condo, hours from her home so she can do warehouse, the pharmacy warehouse. She's processing, doing mail order pharmacy. The whole system has changed, in 4 generations. It's been a complete 180. And I think, for me, the overwhelming thing is looking and understanding that it's not just one thing. It's not just the pharmaceutical industry. It's not just modern medicine. It's not just the oil companies. I mean, it's like there's so many dots here. You can stand in one place and do a circle. Just turn around in a circle and just imagine there's a link to every single thing that is going on that we're dealing with in our world. It's all connected.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be this way. This disinformation that we're living under, the lies that are being spread, the cover-ups that are being propagated that keep people from knowing about things that can help them to change their lives, to revolutionize their health. These are benefiting a small group of people. There are a lot of dots that connect, but really, we're talking about a relatively small group of people compared to the number of people in the United States or in the world, who are propagating these things. And it doesn't have to be this way. So that's what we're trying to do. I know that's what you're trying to do as well, but we're trying to open people's eyes and make them not be afraid to bloom, like you said earlier. Don't be afraid to take control and take responsibility of your life and your health. Don't feel like you're bound to listen to everything that's coming from the mainstream, because you know what? I can tell you firsthand, a huge percentage of it is complete fabricated lie. I know because I worked in that political organization and I saw mainstream media lie countless times, almost on a daily basis, about things that we had firsthand knowledge about. It was just unbelievable. And this was back in the 80s. It has gotten worse today. So people, this is the time to take control of your life and find out what's really going on for yourselves.
And I think that's one of the things that, I think when people realize that, hey, I am one person, but you know what? I can get some things done. I can hand out some flyers. I can go down to the co-op and put a poster up. I can do, maybe 5 things today to bring awareness to other people about this issue. I mean, it doesn't have to be, we do have a March on Monsanto coming up, May 25th, I believe. And, when anybody who's listening to this broadcast, and this is going to go all over the place in many different ways. But when you see people standing on the street corner with signs up protesting GMOs and Monsanto, I want people to connect the dots that we're talking about this very thing. And all of the things that we've talked about in this conversation relate to what people are going to see when they're driving by the protesters on the corner in Portland and all the other places that's going to be happening.
Yeah. That's so true, so true. And what you said about everybody doing their little part, putting a sign up. But I I preach that on a daily basis to people. I have this on our website, this article called 30-second activism. 30 second, I mean, at a minimum, if you took 30 seconds 5 days a week and did something, all the groups, the thousands of people who do have their eyes open, are doing something. This amounts to a tremendous amount of work, a tremendous amount of awareness. Now, if you turn that into 5 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, there's so much power there to open people's eyes to what's going on and change all of this. I mean, we have set back some of the plans that have been desired by the large corporations to implement by decades. They wanted to implement things decades ago that have been pushed back because of our efforts. Now that more and more people are waking up, think of how much more that we can do. But everybody's got to do something. You don't have to get out there. And I would love to see out there people protesting, and that's very effective. But put a bumper sticker on your car, write a letter to the editor, include a signature in your email. There's so many things that you can do to raise awareness.
There are, and we're a country who is really good about, when we catch on to things, when we catch on to an issue, we don't stop. I mean, I'm thinking about the civil rights movement. I mean, that was a singing movement where people were nonviolent, they were singing, and the truth that they were presenting at that time needed to be presented. It was crucial for the survival of our country to be able to, see all people as equal. And this issue is just as crucial. It is even more crucial to our survival as a future, as an Earth, as a planet. We're not going to have 7 generations from now if we do not start singing in this new revolution.
That's absolutely right. I have seen the bees die, LJ. I saw a ladybug colony die. I saw the bees die twice when I lived in Jamestown, New York, the year after. It was in November when I first started seeing the daily spraying. The next spring, there were no longer thousands of bees out in the yard, flying around all the clover. That's the way it had always been all my life. The next year, it was hard to find one. You couldn't go out barefoot before the year they started spraying. The next year after they started spraying, nothing. I mean, you had to go looking. Same thing happened here in Maine. There was a ladybug colony here with I don't know how many ladybugs. Huge colony here at the house that I live in a house from the early 1800s. It used to be the general store way back when all the roads were dirt and they had horses and carriages. And yeah, it's kind of cool, but it's pretty drafty. But there was a ladybug colony here, and it was kind of weird moving here. It took me some getting used to, but it was pretty wild. Well, guess what? When they started spraying in 2008, they started really nailing it here. The next year, they were all dead. In fact, it happened in 3 days. In that summer, there were 3 days of intense spraying, so intense that's when well, it may not have been 2008. I might be getting the year wrong, but I got so upset. I finally called the state of Maine and I talked to the head of the Bureau of Air Quality, and I talked to another person, had long conversations with them because I literally could not breathe the air. In that 3-day period, the entire ladybug colony collapsed during that intense spraying. So the damage that is being done, you mentioned about the planet being damaged and maybe not going to be here. We don't have time to take another risk. We don't have that luxury anymore. People need to get involved and stop this.
They absolutely do, and that's that's part of the whole point of bringing this issue to light. And at first I was completely overwhelmed and going, okay, well, what do we do? And it is overwhelming. It is frustrating. It does feel like the trail when you look outside the window and there's another white streak across the sky that doesn't look natural, and you're seeing a plane leaving it behind. But we've got to move past that. We got to move past that sense of hopelessness and that feeling of betrayal into action. And when we translate that into action, we can change all kinds of things. It's just a matter of, understanding that we have the power to do that.
Yeah.
We're not puppets here.
Yeah.
We can think about things. We can, if we're so sick that a lot of us can't function. I mean, for me, in my own personal experience, I was so sick during when my friend called me to let me know that 9/11 had happened. I was just like, I mean, I can't even function. I can't even think about that because I mean, I'm having my own 9/11 inside my own skin. But that's how I had to handle it, and it's only been that in the years afterwards I learned what really happened on that day. Mm. We don't have that luxury. I don't have that luxury anymore. We have to step up. We have to do something about it, and the first step is education.
Yeah.
And learning about this and then telling other folks, hey, have you seen these things in the sky? Have you figured out what those are? What is that?
You know, it's funny. I grew up hearing this saying, you can't fight City Hall. What I should have been taught was the truth, was that this country was built on a fight against City Hall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it was also built, it was, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin went to the Iroquois Confederacy and saw how things were handled in the Iroquois Confederacy. And that's where the Bill of Rights came from. We need to get back to that, that sense of balance. And, I'm not a political person at all, but when the person's individual sense of voice gets lost and ignored and invalidated, then somehow we lose power. So if all of us who have a voice, who have 10 or 15 minutes a day, can use that to speak out about this issue, to sign a petition, to tell your neighbor, I think we can turn this around.
Yeah. There's no question that this can be turned around. It's just that people have to be willing to do it. But like what you said earlier about if you don't have your health, you lose all your other things, and you're going to lose your ability to protest. You're going to have Dane Wigington on soon, and he said just a few weeks ago, he said, you know what? Sick people don't protest. When somebody asked, why do you think they're spraying?
Exactly.
That may be one of the reasons. And if you let this continue, you're going to get more and more people who are sick from it because these metals accumulate in your body. They cause a wide variety of ailments that people have a tough time associating with the spraying, especially if they don't even know the spraying is going on. And then you won't be able to stand up. So time is running out, but you have the power. You have the ability to do this. You just have to be willing to cut 15 minutes out of the rest of your day, 5 days a week, and do something. Do something. And the combined effort of so many people doing something is the difference between pushing back and staying your little closed bud in a fearful little cell and never being able to experience freedom and health.
And I think that's one of the overall things that this huge agenda that I've come to understand that it to be is trying to convince us is that it's handing out fear like it's candy. We're supposed to be afraid. We're supposed to be forced into, what is the massive education system where we're trying to corral 30 people in a room to sit still, chained to a desk until we decide, okay, you've got 20 minutes for this subject and 15 minutes for this subject and 10 minutes for recess. We're so compartmentalized and industrialized and disconnected.
Yeah.
Even in our daily lives, we don't even realize it.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it. You never should think of the rights that we have, the power that those rights are your power. Those rights are your power,
right.
And no government has the authority to take those away. It's not a matter of do we like it? Do we like it if they take it away? Is it good for us because it's going to make us more secure? Those are ridiculous questions because those are not even in the purview of government. It is your right is not given to you by government. You already possess it. It's here comes this group of people who are trying to take it away because ultimately by removing your rights, they will have more profitable corporations. That's what that's what it comes to. They will have more profit when they take away your rights. If you connect the dots and see how the pattern of right removal leads to a centralization of power, and a centralization of power leads to money and control. Once people figure that out and they understand that they know that, and the people who are orchestrating this understand that, they know how this works. They know how this works. So it's not theirs to take. Your rights, your Bill of Rights your rights don't come from the Bill of Rights. That's just a list of what you already have. So we have to exercise, we have to stand up for those things so they don't get lost, because eventually you'll get bullied into losing them if you don't stand up while you still have the ability to.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess what I was trying to bring out in that is that, you have a right to be here simply because you're breathing, period. It's not given to you from a government or whatever. But I guess what I was trying to bring out with the example of the Bill of Rights is that this was a balanced council style of decision making, that everybody's voice was heard, and the council fire would meet, and the fire would keep burning until everybody's input was weighed and heard and valued. And we don't have that kind of a system now, but we need to get back to it. And, in the Native American culture, you've got people who are considering their actions and what their actions would cost, not just for today, but for the next 7 generations. And the people in charge of making these decisions for our world and for our government are not thinking this way. That's the point I'm making.
That is so valid. I mean, I have friends who have looked at me after I would tell them, and I would lay out the evidence so there was nothing they could say. They would say, "So why should I do this?" And I would point to their child sitting in the chair next to them, saying, "If you don't know why you should do this, then why are we having this discussion at all? I mean, you love your children, right? You care about those who come after you. Isn't this an act of love to watch out for the next generation? How loving is it to watch out for people you won't even know who are coming after you? Don't know what else you can say. You have to have a reason. And if your reason isn't your own family, or extends to your friends and your neighbors and those people you care about, then I don't know how we can find a reason. That reason is there. We just have to remember that it's there. Oh, looks like we may have lost LJ again. Did we lose you? Yes, I see that you've dropped off the console. All right, let's see if LJ comes back in here, and I'll try to talk if I can during that time and keep us occupied. People on the chat room have been supporting these ideas and have been talking about questioning everything. No doubt about it. I mean, are these rights? Here we go. I think LJ's back. Let me see if I can get her on. Back with us?
Yeah, I'm back.
There you are. Sorry about that. I don't know. Yep. Never had problems like this before. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Third time's a charm.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to bring into this. This is just, it's huge. It is overwhelming. It's disheartening. It's frustrating. And, plus we're fighting, and connecting the dots on all of these illnesses that we don't really have to be dealing with because they're really not real. They're manufactured because of what's being done.
That's right. That's right.
It's mind-boggling.
You know what's so cool though, is that these people, most of our clients are herbalists, and the vast majority of herbalists became herbalists because they were sick first, and then they learned so much more than their own doctors could do for them. that they wanted to share that information with other people. That's what gets them high. That's what drives them. It's an act of love. And that is really cool.
That is really cool. That is very cool. Okay, so as an act of love for ourselves and our communities, what can we do to help people become aware about this issue?
All right. Now, I know that there are a lot of issues out there, and people are gravitated to different issues. And I think, first of all, it's important to let people fall into the issue that interests them most. And the reason I believe that is because all of these issues are all connected. That if you start learning about fracking, if you start learning about the wireless, the smart meters, if you start learning about geoengineering and chemtrails, once you start looking at that and you start learning about that and reading it, you're going to start learning the other issues as well. And when you start learning about all of these things and putting it together, you're going to start developing a different worldview. You're going to start seeing the way the world really works. And then hopefully, if you have that reason sitting next to you, if you have those people you care about and love, you're going to be motivated to do something about it. The very first step is where we are at with the chemtrails and geoengineering issue, which is, I believe, the single most important issue because it affects everybody. It affects you quickly and dramatically, and it's doing more damage than anything else. It's destroying everything, everything that lives. Is the thing we have to do is make people aware of it. That's the very first step. We have to do that so we have the political clout we need, because right now when I call the state of Maine as an example, and I talk to the head of the Bureau of Air Quality and I talk to another person who actually is the Bureau of head of Air Quality now, so I've actually spoken to two, just spoke to one of them before they gained that position, and sent them information, videos, and told them how important this was, and they brushed it off. That's not going to happen when you go to them and you say, I have 20,000 people in my group, and we have all signed this letter, and we want an answer about why you're not notifying this, why you're not telling people, why you're not allocating funds to get the evidence we need to have a resolution against this. When you have the people standing there looking them in the eye, figuratively, politically, then you can get something done. So step number one, raise awareness, put that bumper sticker on your car, go out and protest if that works for you, if you're brave enough to do that, and hopefully you should be because it's actually fun. Once you do it, it's very empowering and a lot of fun. Put the sign in your yard, write letters, whatever it takes. Call the news station, make as many people aware of this as possible. Once we have that political clout, then a lot of things will happen. There'll be resolutions, there will be news stories, there will be political action, there will be lawsuits, but we first have to have the people. And that's the stage we're in right now.
Do you think that if the mothers and sisters and cousins and girlfriends and wives of the pilots that are doing this spraying knew what their loved ones were doing, do you think things would change overnight?
I do think they would change pretty rapidly. And the way it would happen is it would be like water behind the dam. And in fact, right now, I think it is happening, thank you to the efforts of the people. We still need more people. We're a long way from there. So everybody does not need to get a false sense of hope. You need to keep working. Hope is there. You just have to work for the results. I think that if those people knew, there would be dramatic change. And right now, I believe they're learning. They're finding out. We have a whistleblower now who actually worked as part of an environmental contractor that was a safety contractor for the military, who is now blowing the whistle on the metals that were being transported into Air Force bases. And the MSDSs, the materials safety data sheets that she saw that showed barium and aluminum being brought into Air Force bases. This is important stuff. As this information comes out,
Megan, you're talking about?
Yep, Megan, yep, Kristen.
Yep, Kristen, Megan.
As people learn about this, as the pilots and the pilots' wives and their children, their family, and their friends learn about this, there's pressure. That's water behind the dam. That's building because there's political pressure. There's social pressure on these people to stop doing or to stand up. And what happens, and this is what happens with people, it's a very social thing, is that it's like kids in a classroom. You ever see those demonstrations where you have all the kids and the teacher puts 2 + 2 = 5 on the chalkboard and says, there we go, there's our lesson for today, and how long it takes for the first child to stand up. But finally that first child says, no, that's not right. But that child who steps forward gives a few others courage. And then they come forward and say, no, I knew that. That wasn't right. And then the rest of them go, we all knew that wasn't right. That's exactly the way it works in society. And we're in that stage right now where there's more and more people starting to stand up and say, this isn't right. This isn't right. And that pressure is building. So those pilots' wives, those pilots' children, families, or loved ones, they need to know about this if they don't already. And that will further increase the pressure behind the dam. And when that dam breaks, you'll maybe, perhaps one day soon, hopefully, you'll have an array of pilots that all come out at the same time and do a press conference and say, this is what we're doing, this is it. We've talked about it secretly to each other. We've whispered to each other because we knew we couldn't talk about it openly. And now we finally made a decision to stand up and come out, and the dam will break.
It will break. It sure will. I'm looking forward to that day.
Oh boy, let me tell you, I look forward to it every second of every day because I suffer. I suffer from this stuff directly.
You know, I get so excited when I see a normal looking cloud in the sky, and that's so much less of the time than I see a cloud that doesn't look normal.
That is so funny you said that. My business partner said that same thing today. She goes, there's actually a cumulus cloud. Look, there's a natural cloud out there. We actually saw a real cloud today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's exactly true. In fact, people were on our Facebook book group yesterday saying the same thing, that they were amazed that they had spotted the first natural cloud they've seen in ages.
And it's a good thing. It's like, yes, we can rejoice when we see one that looks like it's supposed to. So it sounds like, you know, we have totally gone over the time that originally I had said we would do. But how can, if you could just give us the information real quick, how do people get in touch and pay attention to this issue on the Facebook page? There's a group. There's, you know, how can people plug in?
Okay, well, the first thing is get involved, get connected with other people in this issue. And the way that you can do that is you can go to our website, globalskywatch.com. You can go to a couple other great websites out there like geoengineeringwatch.org. There's another website called aircrap.com. I hope I have that right. Those are three. Our particular website is globalskywatch.com. You can link to our Facebook group, which is very active and very fast growing. For the latest news and information, you can start talking and connecting with other people. You can find people in your area. We have a calendar. We have a calendar and a website forum that we will create a forum specifically for your city, and then you can connect with other people in your city and start getting a group together so you can get together and talk and protest or hang signs up or whatever you want to do. And that's the first step. You've got to join this group, come to the website, globalskywatch.com, go to our Facebook group, join, and connect with other people. And you'll learn. Just by connecting with other people, you'll fall into a groove and you'll start to understand what you need to do and what you want to do. You'll want to do something, and you'll find your place in this whole thing. And somebody just told me.
And it seems like.
Yeah, aircraft.org. I did have the org right. Aircraft.org.
Aircraft.org.
Yeah, that kind of is like saying it the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty basic and descriptive and in your face. Like, yeah, this is what this is. You're breathing it.
Right. You know? Yeah.
Which is not funny. It's just like, it's a great play on words. Did you want to open up things to questions or move to that segment of the show?
Sure.
How are you? Where are you at with things?
I'm fine. It's completely up to you. I'm perfectly fine if you'd like to.
I think that'd be great. Let's do it.
Okay, and people, if they want to ask a question, they just press *6 on their phone, and it. Let me go ahead and turn that feature on.
Q&A session started.
Yeah, if you just press *6 on your phone, you'll be entered in the Q&A mode, queue, and then you can speak with us directly. So if anybody on the console wants to do that, we are here and we're ready to roll. Now, do you it was great speaking with you. We had a long conversation the other day. You have a pretty nice arrangement at your own station that you work with, right? Is that something? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Let me bring you back there. Okay, we actually do have someone in queue. Are you back with us, LJ?
I'm back with you, yes.
Wonderful. Sorry, Q&A mode put everybody out. Here we go. We do have a caller here. So,
Okay.
there we are. Caller's now live. Caller, you there?
Yes, I'm here. I just didn't want to be on the speaker. I figured it would probably echo. Hi, Russ. This is Lynn in Maryland.
Hi.
And it's great to hear you. I missed the beginning of the call, but did you want to give out the website for the end geoengineering?
Oh yeah, End Geoengineering is actually a website that we created. GlobalSkywatch.com created a website called End Geoengineering.com specifically for the purpose of introducing new people to this subject. That's what we're all about, is getting new people educated. And it's a relatively small website. It's probably only got about 8-9 pages. It's going to grow a little bit, but that's it. It's got some videos on it. It's got some very basic but descriptive information that has links to other websites where they can learn more. But it's very easy to navigate. It's very easy to read. And the idea is about getting people introduced to this subject. So thanks for bringing that up. That's a very good point.
Okay, thank you. I didn't think you had, I'm kind of tired, but I didn't think you had done that. And it is a great site. It is the perfect website to introduce people to all of this stuff without overwhelming them and giving them the facts in a really attractive website that's very, very easy to navigate. You all done a great job with that. Something that's been going on in my area, and I live probably, I don't know, 7-8 miles north of the D.C. border. And it actually has started driving me crazy. I can hear a plane all day long.
Yep.
I can hear it distancing and then moving closer and moving away and moving closer, moving away. And you don't see it. And the other day, I mean, the sky, I mean, clouds like I've never seen, and there are no chemtrails. There are no chemtrails. But what I have in my area is an outrageous, and I mean, I am not kidding you, an outrageous number of drones. During the day, especially at night, you can see them, satellite height and things like that. But one thing that happened, and I already am ill because I was exposed to toxins and solvents and heavy metals at work a couple of years ago with photography chemicals. But I don't go out that much. But the past week and a half, 2 weeks, I've been out 3 times. And tonight I went to the grocery store, which is why I was late getting on the call. Black car, black windows. And that's the 3rd time in a week I've had a black car with black windows in front of my house. And it's not the insurance company, I'm sure of that. They use crappy cars usually, and I haven't been investigated in a long time. So, one of the things, and what that does, what all of this does, it doesn't intimidate me anymore. It makes me mad. It absolutely makes me mad. I may be limited into, as to how much I am capable of doing, but I am capable of having a conference call on Saturday night that I invite people to. And last Saturday night, I played the audio from last week's interview with Dane, which was absolutely wonderful. And I invite people who don't have access to the internet, who can't hear it, but anybody's always welcome. And I talk to people, even a cashier at the grocery store, whoever it is, because I have limited contact, but I am on conference calls. And so when I have an opportunity, I will bring up something to wake people up. One of the things I was thinking about when you were sharing a few minutes ago was how important it is that if the going gets rough for people, and I live in an area that's a lot different probably than some other areas where people live. It's very political. And, I live in a state that is now taxing rain, for Pete's sake. But is that what I have found is that most people are just bullies, and it is just about intimidation and to scare people, and it's like being afraid of the boogeyman. And even if it's not the boogeyman, well, if I have a reason to be scared, then I have a reason to be scared. And one of the problems I have is that I am not surrounded with other people. So, I'm a little isolated, which is not a good thing. But that won't silence me. And it won't stop me from speaking out. And it won't stop me from, contacting whoever. And it is amazing how this all connects, because I had no idea. Last July, I woke up. It was actually the thing in Colorado that woke me up, the movie theater shooting. And I literally, because I had, been so sick, I literally woke up to, oh my God, what happened to the world? And it just continues to grow. The things that, find out and discover, and how it is all connected. Agenda 21, Common Core Curriculum, the geoengineering. And actually, when it comes to whatever it is, that plane, it's because it's not a weed whacker, it's not a lawnmower, it's not a fan. Clearly, when the cicadas come and it drown the noise out. But the problem with that, at least with chemtrails, it was easy to point.
Yeah.
It's actually easy to point people to the drones, and kids especially. Like, see that? That's not normal. That's not normal. We're being surveilled. We have a right to our privacy in this country. So I do things like that, but without the chemtrails, it's a little difficult, because now all you're talking about is sound.
Yeah.
So, but I'm telling you, they were clouds. I think it was Thursday, like I've never seen before.
Some
fantastic looking clouds. Let me tell you, they weren't normal.
What you're saying.
At all.
Yeah.
But when without the actual chemtrails, that makes it hard to address.
Yeah.
In a more legitimate fashion, because then you just sound like a wacko. So I've actually thought about, I thought about it tonight. Well, in fact, if that car didn't leave, because I thought, wow, we're going to have a standoff right here. I'm not getting out of my car. And even after you leave, I'm going to see if you come back. And, but
Muted.
actually thought about
Unmuted.
grocery store, and there wasn't a car or anything then. It didn't happen until it was in front of my house when I pulled into the driveway. The car pulled up. Actually stopped in front of my house and then pulled up two houses. It was the weirdest thing. But I actually thought about going by the fire department and talking to the firemen and saying, you hear that? You hear that? Don't you hear that? What is that? Because that has been going on now for 2 weeks, from 8:30 in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, for 2 weeks straight, Monday through Friday. Why?
Yeah.
So that may be the next thing I do. Wake up the firemen.
Yeah. Looks like I'm not getting audio. Can you? Oh, I guess you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly, and I'm going to mute. And again, thank you, Russ, so much.
Oh, good.
I really appreciate all you do for all of us.
Thank you. You're very welcome, believe me, and I'm very grateful for what you're doing. Anybody who's out there doing stuff like what you're doing, I can't tell you how much I admire and appreciate it. One thing I would love to respond to in that is that there are back in 2010, here in the Bangor area, for 2 years, from 2008 to 2010, they were completely blacking out the sky virtually every day with persistent chemtrails, and it was absolutely horrendous. It was obvious. It was crazy. In fact, the Boston Globe had an article that something about it actually was talking about how records had been set, that in the Bangor area it was the dimmest summer in history. Okay, and it was because of the chemtrails. Of course, they didn't mention that in the article. Now, what happened um, shortly after that is the chemtrails, and this happened overnight. All the chemtrails started being short, and there were only persistent chemtrails now 4 to 6 days a month, and they weren't nearly as thick as they were before. But overnight, the jets would spray on the same schedules, but all the trails were non-persistent. They were short, and these short trails still had the same smell and taste. And like I said, the jets flew on the same schedule as the persistent chemtrails jets did previously. So obviously they changed their equipment. They made the trails short in the purpose of covering this up in the public eye. That must be what that was all about. Now, if that wasn't enough, and because I can smell and taste it, I will tell you that the taste and the smell still coincided with the appearance of the chemtrails. It's just that the chemtrails were short instead of long, but they were still falling. Particulates were still falling out of the air from these low-flying aircraft, and eventually they went to medium altitudes too, and it took a lot longer for the particles to come down, but they still do. Okay, now if that wasn't enough, back in 2007 or 8, I don't remember exactly, I think it was 2007, the same thing happened when I lived in Jamestown. This was a few years earlier. They were blanketing the sky every single day, whiting out the sky. And I mean, it just shocks me, it blows my mind that people weren't noticing this. All of a sudden, there was a 4-day break where there was no spraying for 4 days. And I was so hopeful it was over because I was in torture. I was just being tortured by the pain, and I was just struggling. In fact, I ended up leaving there eventually. After the 4-day break, all the trails came back. Trails didn't come back. The planes came back, flying on the same schedules. The particulate smell, the metallic taste and smell in the air was the same. Same schedules, same jets, but guess what? All of the trails were short. And right now you've got textbooks that are written that are in the hands of your school children. You've got NASA sky charts that are showing short uh, chemical aerosol trails, and they're saying those are harmless water vapor contrails. I have watched the sky my entire life. I've lived on a military base. I've traveled the United States multiple times. I've watched the sky everywhere I went. I've flown. I used to fly every year when I was younger. I've always watched the sky, always looked out the window of the jets, and I used to collect pictures of jets, had thousands, okay, when I was younger. Never, ever have I seen a trail of any type, long or short, ever come out of any jet, fighter, commercial, tanker, nothing, nothing at all. Today, literally 49 out of 50, and this is a conservative number, 49 out of 50 jets I see have a trail coming out. And of course, I know that the metals are involved and the chemicals are involved because I taste and smell it. So I know I say this a lot, and the people who listen on a regular basis have heard me say this before, but this is the great lie that is being told to the children. And this is your indication that they have no plans on stopping anytime soon, because they're lying to your children and telling your children that these are harmless water vapor trails while they poison them with barium, aluminum, strontium, mercury, and God knows what else. So I just wanted to put that out there and make that clear.
Russ,
Yeah.
Miss LJ again. I wanted to, when I was a kid, what you just said reminds me of when I was little and in school, kindergarten, first, second grade, something like that, and stop smoking. The big educational thrust to teach kids that smoking is harmful. And I remember coming home from hearing this at school and crawling up in my dad's lap and saying, "Hey, Dad, guess what I learned today?" And proceeded to absolutely bug the living daylight out of my parents. And both of them ended up stopping smoking simply because of what I had learned, in school. Well, now we've got the opposite situation. Kids are getting the wrong information. And it's up to us to help them understand, well, cloud seeding is what they're saying, but what are they feeding those clouds with? What is that aluminum going to do if we're breathing it? Maybe we're the ones who need to take that responsibility on to showing the kids, hey, this is what cloud seeding is about, as opposed to what they're getting in school.
Absolutely. There's no question, because the government is taking the other side of the fence and they're saying that's harmless water vapor. And to me, it's not to me, it's just the way it is that telling children that poison, toxic poison, nanoparticle metals that are toxic to the body are harmless, telling them that those are harmless, is like telling them that the poison sitting on the table that is sugar. You're telling a lie that's going to make them believe a lie so that they do nothing to oppose it. And that is that the definition of evil? Maybe. I mean, that is
certainly.
That's there are no, I can't even speak to that. That is horrible. And you can see I get a little fired up about this, but this is happening right now. Right now, they're telling our children that these short trails are condensation trails, and it is not true.
No, it's not. And one thing I think about too is, coming from this from an artistic standpoint, if you go into any art history book, just basic introduction to art history, and you start flipping through pages and start looking at paintings done, I don't know, in 1700, 1800. Look at clouds in these maritime paintings of ships and things. Those clouds are real.
Yeah.
Compare that to what's overhead 90% of the time, and do the math. They can't obliterate. They can't draw in chemtrail cartoons for every single cartoon on TV. They can't Photoshop this stuff into everything. And just like a banker, someone who's a teller in a bank is she's going to learn, or he or she will learn the difference between real and counterfeit money by handling real money. Let's go back and look at what real clouds look like. Let's go back to some of these artistic paintings and see what this is supposed to be looking like, and compare.
Yeah. Yep. And not only that, I've had some people who have approached me who say, well, I've actually seen trails back in, I worked for an airline back in the mid 80s, and I saw trail, the short trails here and there. And the spray program has been going on for decades. And before they actually start a widespread global program, they test this tremendously. They want to know what the dissipation rates are. They want to test fibers and see how far the particulates get carried. They want to see how fast things fall to the ground. They want to see how the different velocities of wind at the different layers of air carry these things, how far, how effective. These tests go on for years or for decades. If jet engines produced water vapor, then they would practically always produce water vapor, because the air conditions at those high altitudes doesn't really change that much, and hasn't changed in 40 years ago. So why do 49 out of 50 very conservatively jets today produce these, and they don't? They didn't back then. Well, the engines were different. No, the engines are more efficient today, but they didn't happen overnight. In Jamestown, this happened virtually overnight. Within 1 year, you went from nothing, and Jamestown doesn't even have a nearby airport. And it's the airport that it has can't handle large jets. So they either had to go to Erie or Buffalo. Buffalo's 90 miles north. So you would hardly ever see jets in the sky over Jamestown at all, because there were no low-flying jets ever. And then all of a sudden one day you've got these jets crisscrossing the sky, leaving these trails. Now for me it's easy because I taste and smell them. When the short, non-persistent chemtrails go over our heads, if they're at a low altitude, it takes 30 to 40 minutes. Now, for the particulates to fall down and for me to start tasting the metal. I've timed this countless times over the years, stood outside for periods of time and measured this time, this amount of time that it takes. If they're flying at a higher altitude, not 32,000 feet, because they look really, really tiny at that distance, but now they've gone up to a higher altitude, somewhat higher, and it takes an hour to 2 hours for the particulates to reach when they're at that altitude. Those are my personal measurements that I've seen. But you know, at those altitudes, most people don't even see these trails unless they look intently at the sky. I've been in Bangor countless times, and I'll stand out in the parking lot of a restaurant that we're going to, let's say, and I'll look for a few minutes in the sky. Now, if you just glance at the sky, you don't see any jets. But if you stand there and look, you can count 4, 5, 8, 11 jets at medium altitudes with trails behind them, but they're high enough, so they're so small that you won't notice them unless you stand there and look. And that is the point.
And then, you know, one of the things that actually my partner did this week was, it was kind of funny because he got on the flight tracker website, and okay, so he's looking out the window and looking at the flight tracker website and going, okay, this is Turkish Air, and he goes and he posts on Turkish Air's webpage, hey, when you're flying over beautiful Maine, you might have left something behind. And he got so much response on Facebook. You know, it was like, wow, we can actually find out which planes are the ones who are going right over our heads. There's a way to do this.
Yeah, there are. You know, and a lot of people now are using those services and tracking some of the commercial flights. Now, I will say this: the vast majority of the jets that I see, I'm not the vast majority, all of them. All of the jets I've seen, with the exception of the first maybe a year or less, 6 months, every single jet that's spraying chemtrails, whether persistent or non-persistent, are silver unmarked jets. All of them.
Interesting. I'm getting close-ups on, you know, the bottoms of planes, and they say things. So when we were paying attention earlier this week, I believe, it was very evident that, you know, he was tracing on the site, looking up above, and there were 2 jets that flew over that were not on the site. And, you know, we don't know if they just weren't registered with that system or, you know, whatever the excuse was. But we're not being able to see that much. But you're over closer to Bangor, right? Is that right? Or Augusta?
I'm closer to Bangor.
Okay. And I'm on the mid-coast. I'm kind of in the middle of the state on the coast. And, you know, I'm just noticing, you know, just from that site that, okay, we've got flights hopping over from Germany. They're just taking a little flop and coming right over. And it seems to be the planes that were coming from Germany that are doing the spraying. It's just, that's the connection that we've been able to make, you know, just in the few days that we've started paying attention.
Wow. Yeah. And it could be. And I would also warn anybody who's doing this kind of research that this is such an evil thing that is taking place, that the people who are in control of this are going to go to any means to hide it, to obfuscate it, to obscure the truth that they can. So don't be fooled by any anomalies you see. If you see planes painted to look like Southwest, you don't really know they're commercial unless you're inside of them. If they have a transponder, well, traditionally only commercial jets have transponders, but what if the military says, well, okay, we're going to start fooling people, so we're going to say, because we're pushing this lie that these short trails are condensation trails, well, we want more people to see commercial jets with transponders. So let's paint up a bunch of our tankers to look like commercial jets and give them transponders. When you have all the money and the resources in the world and you're trying to cover up the biggest crime that's ever happened in history, you will go to no end. There's no end to the means that you will go to cover this up. So because people don't generally think in terms of how evil works, a lot of times they underestimate this stuff. And they just look at something and say, oh, that's a commercial plane because it's painted. You don't know that. You don't know that. In World War II, there were deceptions that took place, and there's a whole lot you could get into here too, but where they had blow up tanks, throughout a city, and other equipment that was blown up and put throughout a city as a deception. You can go online and read about these interesting things that happened that were just huge mammoth deceptions that took place during the wars. So just everybody's got to think. You've got to realize that question everything. Just because something looks one way doesn't mean it isn't. If I was evil, this is how I try to figure these kinds of things out. If I was evil, what would I do? Well, if people are tracking planes and trying to see if these are commercial jets and decide whether or not those are harmless contrails, then let's make the planes look commercial. I've had a lot of people online argue that very point with me. They say, look, that's not a military jet, it's a commercial jet. You're crazy, you're out of your mind. And they're just being very naive about the whole subject of how deception really works. There is another caller on the console, just so you know, whenever you're ready.
Go for it. Yeah, let's take it.
You ready? Okay. Hi there. Okay, caller's on.
Hey, Russ. Dan in Rochester.
Hi, Dan.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fired up.
Yeah, you are. Hi, LJ. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. Hey, that last point you guys were talking about, I think that's phenomenal. If you understand the data farming that goes on in networks, that kind of thing. I'm a network engineer basically, and I study internet. I have been doing this for a long time. And anyway, there's no doubt that, Russ, I think you were saying it, that these guys adapt to what we do. They have ideas of how we react in any given situation. And if they're wrong, they can still adapt.
Well, Dan,
right?
and the thing, Dan, is they know people better than people know themselves. They know how people will react.
Oh, sure.
If people try to guess, how they would react to a given situation, and you looked at what their guess was versus those who study mass psychology, the people who study the subject, who are the brain trusts of these operations, those would be right and the people would be wrong. They don't know how they would react. They think some things of themselves that aren't true. They don't know themselves yet.
Well, I agree with that, no doubt. But they can. It's tit for tat. You know what I mean? It's to have an ability to circumvent maybe what they're doing or whatever is obviously critically important. But anyway, I just had a quick list of things that I had. I just wanted to say real quick. I didn't want to take any time, but I wanted to comment about the woman who had called, and hopefully she's still listening. But she was talking about being able to hear the planes. She couldn't necessarily see them or whatever. And I've had so many experiences with that kind of thing where they spray very heavily here in upstate New York all the time, and it's always cloudy where I live. It's nonstop, ever, 365 days a year. It's insane. And so anyway, I've had the same experience with heavy cloud cover, and I'll still hear multiple planes at a time, and it's all day long, never stops. And I've thankfully caught pictures of lines way up in the like mid atmosphere of very defined lines, 5 or 10 of them or whatever, as the clouds in a particular system that had come through dissipated, and it exposed all these lines above where we were, what you could see before, when the storm was there.
Many times I've seen the same thing, Dan, same thing.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I'll tell you what, I do a lot of yard work. I do cut trees down. I'm doing that kind of stuff. I can hear through the Husqvarna helmet that I have with ear protection. I can, while I'm weed whacking, I can still hear the planes, so I know what that woman was saying. Russ, terrific conversation you had on the short trails, and I've been watching them for a long time. I knew they were just adaptive, and it makes me wonder what else they might be spraying in a shorter spray. If they're, removing something or adding something that's even worse or whatever. You made a great point also about engines being more efficient. People talk about, well, it's just exhaust or whatever coming out of an engine. We have to say, well, after 100 years or whatever of having clean engines, we haven't progressed further than this kind of exhaust. Another point that was made, I think LJ made it. I've actually had planes fly overhead, and I went inside and went on to Flight Tracker to see what planes were in my area, and there were literally none. But if I went outside, there were, 4, 6, 8 or whatever. So, there definitely aren't ties of commercial airliners or whatever doing this type of stuff. Anyway, that's about what I had. I didn't have any questions, I don't think, but terrific show. Thanks for letting me talk. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much.
That's a good point. A good point.
Yeah, Dan's.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Dan's a smart guy. He has a lot of good things to say.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken to him before. Yeah.
I think you were starting to mention something about the situation at the radio station.
The situation at the radio station?
Yeah, a while back you said you got like a groovy situation or something. And then somebody called. The lady called.
Oh, I don't recall what that was going to be.
Well, I just thought I would take this opportunity actually to say, yes, it is a groovy station, and people can tune in to the broadcast, and I will be interviewing Dane Livingston live on that show. I'll also have parts of this broadcast and whatever else I can put together. That's next Friday. Also, the following Thursday, that's next Friday from 9 to 11 on WRFR, and it does stream live, so you can listen to it all over the world at WRFR.org. And then the following Thursday is the other radio show that I do. It's called Tribal Vibe, and that's a Native American and acoustic and instrumental music and native teaching. And Mark and I are going to get on there, and we're going to talk about this chemtrail stuff and use parts of our conversation tonight, the Destination Maine interviews on Friday, and music, actually. For example, Prince's song where he talks about chemtrails, and Beck's song, and we might get all kinds of music going on. But that's a 3-hour show. That'll be a 3-hour broadcast a week from this coming Thursday, so Thursday week from 9 until noon. And so we'll be addressing this topic of geoengineering and chemtrails and all that twice. So tune in.
Well, I'm sure glad you're covering it twice. It's that important.
It is that important, and it's also going to be available online as a podcast, and so we can send it, as links. Anybody can use it. Feel free to send it out to anyone who wants to know about this, because I'm designing the Destination Maine show is a talk format. The Tribal Vibe show is a music format. And, some people can hear truth better with different, in different ways. So that's why I'm trying to present this in both different ways to broad spectrum here. So.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, we had a conversation earlier. I'm sorry I didn't catch on what you were talking about the Groovy Station, but now I got it as soon as you started talking. It's like, yeah, that's very cool what you do down there and the work, and you've done that for a while. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, well, Tribal Vibe is, it is an outpouring. I started that show actually before I left North Georgia, and it is an outpouring of the healing process that I have come through, and as a part of coping with chronic pain, people told me, oh, well, you need to learn how to meditate. Well, I didn't exactly meditate because I can't stop thinking about pain all day. So I finally thought, well, gosh, I'll get in the tub and play some Native American music, and one thing led to another, and so all of the music on Tribal Vibe is tub tested. So, it is pretty relaxing, groovy for to sit up, but
tub tested. That is classic.
Well, yeah, tub tested. Yeah, tub tested. It did get the attention of a Lakota Sioux who happened to be in jail for offenses related to alcohol abuse, and he started tuning in, and he gathered a whole bunch of folks around him who also told them, hey, they have these little radios they can listen. And he'd get his minister to start calling and requesting these songs. And finally, I'm on the air, and I'm like, well, why doesn't your friend call? Because you really want to know. And I said, well, yeah. And so he told me, he's in jail for a long time, and just needs some hope. I was like, oh, okay, no problem. Well, this fella ended up writing to me, and half of his buddies did too. And not because, they wanted me to be the next prison bride. It was because they were communicating how healing this was to listen to the show. And what he said was that when he's listening to Tribal Vibe, he is soaring with the eagles, not in a 6x6 cell. And so that's the premise for Tribal Vibe, is that it's teaching, it's native truth, it's wisdom, it's inspiration, and it's music that you can use to package this stuff and put it away and store it in your heart. So it's my spiritual practice, and I just hope I can bring awareness about this topic in a way that brings honor to everyone. We'll see what happens. So everybody tune in.
Oh, that's awesome. That's such a great idea and very unique. Love seeing what you're doing. There is one more person on the call-in console if you're interested in seeing what they have to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I know who this is. You're on.
Hey, this is Helen.
Hi.
I wanted to say, LJ, I'm really enjoying the conversation tonight and all the information that's being shared.
Thank you.
I really like the quote that you said earlier about being curled up in a ball before being able to open. Is it possible? Can you repeat that? Do you have
Sure thing. Absolutely. It is a quote from Anais Nin, and the day came when the courage to remain tight in a bud became greater than the risk it took to bloom. Wait a minute, let me do that one more time. The day came, when the risk it took to remain tight in a bud became greater than the risk it took to bloom. That's it.
That is so beautiful. Is that a Native American?
I believe the person that wrote that, it was a poet, and it's just in one of my little booklets of inspirational quotations that I use on the Tribal Vibe show, and also in my calligraphy art. So I have a ton of quotations, and I don't know where all of them come from, but I have a giant red notebook of them, and it's in there. So.
Well, you also caught my interest when you mentioned you were in North Georgia. I am from North Georgia, so I wondered where you lived when you lived here.
Well, right before I left, I lived in Gainesville, Georgia, which actually got me in touch with my Cherokee ancestors. So.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's really great. It is beautiful here. I live just sort of at the very tip of the Blue Ridge, the Appalachian Mountains, southernmost tip, and it was really. I mean, it's still a beautiful area, but there's just so much damage to the trees, and I'm watching a lot of damage to nature from these chemtrails. So I'm it sounds like you're doing a lot of really cool stuff to get this information out in different formats and different mediums. And the thing that I found really interesting, I don't know if you guys paid much attention to this or it was on the news where you were, but what about all that ice that was blowing in off the lakes in, I think it was Minnesota? Did you guys hear anything about that?
I saw that video.
Yeah,
I did too. It was weird.
I mean, it almost looked like the ice had little legs and was just sort of crawling. And I immediately thought about Dane, and maybe you would mention that in your interview with him. Ask him what he thinks about that. I wondered if that was artificially ice-nucleated snow. I'll bet you that stuff is fake ice or chemicals in it or something.
It really looked spiky, didn't it? It had all these little spikes, just like the pictures we've seen of the fake ice that Dane has been talking about.
Yep, that was the first thing that came to my mind. A friend of mine was actually telling me about it, and I went, "What?" And I thought, and then I finally saw a clip of it on the news here, and it was the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life. So, and we've also got. They reported today. I think it was 91 degrees up in Billings, Montana, and in North Georgia. I mean, we had highs like in the 60s here. And I'm just going, what is wrong with this picture that in the South it's actually cooler in mid-May than it is up, in a state that's right next to Canada. I mean, they have got this weather so whacked out. I actually put another call. I've been calling the weather departments at my local television stations and leaving messages for them. So, anyway, I just wanted to...
Helen, what they say about the weather, don't you?
What?
Well, if it weren't for weather, there wouldn't be anything to talk about. So, I mean, let's talk about it, let's use it and talk about it. Let's talk up a blue streak about all this stuff.
Well, yeah, that gives you a great intro, doesn't it, to talk to people and say, well, hasn't the weather been strange lately?
Well, it's not just been lately. It's been, I know when I left North Georgia in 2007 and drove down the hill to hang out in Charleston for a couple of years, the weather was very strange. The fall of 2008, there must have been, 8 or 10 hurricanes slingshotting up the coast. And that's what got my attention. But then when I took a 6-month journey from Charleston to Halifax, which is how I got in Maine. And everybody, all along the way, I mean, every single person that I met was commenting on how weird the weather was. So it wasn't just, in Georgia where there was a drought, where Lake Lanier's dried up. It's everywhere. And, getting introduced to the chemtrail issue has helped me come to an understanding that this has been going on for quite a long time. A long time.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And when we had Hurricane Ivan that washed in here, and I mean, it just rained. We had so much water that came down here, and, we are well inland from a hurricane, and just your mentioning that makes me think back to, at the time, I didn't know anything about chemtrails or weather modification.
vegetation or anything, and we all thought that was so strange. And the Amicalola River, which runs near where I live, it was just unbelievable how far it came outside of its banks on either side. I mean, it must have been, 60 yards or more on either side of the river. And I just sat there when I finally went there, sometime afterward and saw that. It was months later, and the track, you could see where that water had just rushed and pushed down all the vegetation. And I thought, oh my gosh, what kind of volume of water must have come through here at the time? I was just like, wow, I would like to be a fly on the wall to have seen. That must have been an incredible sight to see. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, weird things have been happening, but this has been such an unusual spring here. We are just being inundated with rain. We should be having nice, mild weather by mid-May, and, lots of sunshine, and we've been having tons of rain and really unusually cool temperatures. I think tonight we're supposed to have a low around 40 degrees in mid-May. Wow. And we've been having so much wind that just sustained wind, all day long, which is also abnormal. And winds that have been coming from the southeast, while the cool front is dropping in from the northwest, which, it's just crazy. But anyway, I just wanted to weigh in and say thanks. It's been really interesting to listen to tonight, and we're glad to make your acquaintance and know that you're out there. And I will try and tune in on the computer and listen to your program.
That would be great. It's so nice to chat with you, Helen, and thank you for calling in from the bottom of the trail.
Yeah, we love it here.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thanks so much for having me.
All right, you take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye, Helen. Yeah, Helen has talked to me quite extensively about the damage that's been done on her property, and we actually did a kind of an interview where she showed me the pictures, and she would narrate the pictures of what's been done. And she's lost trees and plants. Had a beloved horse that she lost recently. So there's a lot of damage going on in her side of the park here.
I was going to ask her about that. I'm glad you illuminated that a little bit. Yeah, I think when we put two and two together and realize, okay, from the health standpoint, we can get a grasp on that. We pretty much rolled around in that topic for the majority of the night. But it's not just our health; it's the health of the trees, it's the health of the plants, it's the health of the soil, it's the health of the animals, the birds, the bees, the flowers. I mean, every bit of it is affected by this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
There isn't anything that isn't affected, actually.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, these are nanoparticles that can't get filtered out with regular air filter equipment. So you can't just go buy a HEPA filter and expect it to clear the air of the nanoparticles. It doesn't work. I've tried it myself, and it removes pollen. I've bought some nice air filtration equipment. Removes pollen, smoke, everything. Dust makes air beautiful, but it will not remove the scent and the taste of the chemtrail particulates from the air. They're too small to be filtered with a HEPA filter. Hey, we've got, if you're interested, it looks like Lexi is on in the queue as well. Do you want to talk to Lexi for a second? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, bring on.
All right. Hi, Lexi.
Hey, guys. How are you tonight?
Doing good. Good to hear from you.
Thank you. Good show, as usual. Thank you very much. Good segue talking about the ecosystem. Because today, after got some results from one of our activists in San Francisco from a rainwater sample from the Bay Area done on May 5th, I phoned up Francis Mangels, who is, he's my go-to guy as far as being an expert biologist and scientist. Anything about the ecosystem, plants, animals, soil, he is the man. I mean, not only is he highly degreed, he's also Mensa. I mean, the guy is unbelievable. So I called him and asked him just to verify the results of that rainwater sample, which was evidencing the aluminum, the barium, and the strontium. Aluminum was 620 parts per million per liter. The barium was, I believe, 92, 95, and the strontium was 62, somewhere in that range. And according to Francis, he said that is almost just exactly matches the Wells-Bach patent. And I relayed all that information back to our group of activists there in San Francisco. Now, that was a rainwater test, just, brand new within, the last couple of weeks. So, again, the evidence coming out, and this was from a lab I had not seen before. It was out of Pittsburgh, California, independent lab, garnering those types of results. So, I talked to Francis today, and again, he is available to, interview with anyone, and he is an expert biologist. This guy's a retired USDA Forest Service man. I mean, this man is the man when it comes to the actual science. So, both of you should keep him in mind for any future discussions, where people do have questions about the detrimental effects that their environment is experiencing, whether it be trees or their animals, etc. He's awesome. He is retired. He had a triple bypass, and his lady is having health problems as well. So he doesn't travel very much, but he did say again today, he's always available to do any kind of phone, or internet interviews, and he is extremely accurate. He is an extremely scholarly human being, of just the finest of the finest.
Cool. Thank you. Can we find out how to get in touch through Russ or
yes,
another way?
Okay.
Yep.
Russ has Francis's information. Another thing that Francis said, a couple of other mentions. Both he and Dane have been making inroads with the Tea Party up in Northern California. They both live in the Mount Shasta, Redding area, and they are getting some progress with the Tea Party there, which has a pretty big presence in that part of the country, and they are garnering support from those guys. So we're very happy about that. He also, where he lives, there's what he calls sort of the hippie tree hugger environmentalist. And what he's seeing now is that group of people, that segment of our Americans, as well as real right-wing Republican Tea Party types, they are actually coming together over this issue. And that's exactly what we want to see happen here, because we all have commonality in that we want clean air, clean water, and good organic food. So that is some very good news that we're getting people from very differing philosophical standpoints coming together, and so that's good news as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
Thank you for bringing that up. When I think of all the good that people like Rachel Carson did to bring awareness, I mean, again, another issue I remember in school studying, ecology, the big word that, the big buzzword of the 70s is ecology. And to think about, what we're doing to the planet with these chemtrails and all the other things that are connected to it is just, it's mind-numbing, staggering.
Well, we have
the ramifications of it.
This is a huge learning curve process for many people. it's a paradigm shift that we're hoping to achieve here. And some people are way up to speed, and others are coming on slowly. They're in disbelief. After people's whole lives of being told to trust institutions and trust the government, this is a hard thing, and you have to have, you have to come at it from love and a loving standpoint, that we care about humanity. I also follow the Dalai Lama, and he was just up in Oregon last weekend, and I listened to his chat, and he talked about that now, even though prayer and meditation is very, very good, we need to do that as a practice. He said that is not enough now. Now is the time to take action. And he said that, many people hold him up as this higher pillar of him being a holy person, but he explained that we are all holy human beings, and that we have to take action here, and take control, and we have the power to do that. We just need to continue on patiently, kindly, and from a loving standpoint of our care for humanity. It's extremely important. It's disheartening when people find out what's really going on here, but we have no other choice but to stay on the path and keep going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, lest anyone think that the Dalai Lama is someone who is a high and lofty person as far as, and yes, he is, but, this is a man who carries his own suitcase. He doesn't let other people carry his stuff for him.
Right. He was trying to explain to folks that all of you, are just as holy as I am. We all are from the source. We all have this within ourselves. We don't have to look to these outer sources or these institutions that have been created that have become completely misguided. We ourselves have to empower ourselves now and take control and create a critical mass here for our survival. And that's what this is about, ladies and gentlemen. This is about us surviving here. It's of the gravest importance, and Dane and Russ and Francis and all of the people on this phone call, all the regular people and people that are just new to this, understand that this is the most critical issue that we are facing on this planet with regard to our survival.
Yeah. And our children's survival, and their children's survival, and 7 generations from now, and on and on. Yeah. We're not going to get there if we don't do this now.
Right, and I keep hearing more and more stories of people with their horses having problems and their pets having problems. Let's face it, everybody, they're breathing the toxicity as well. So it is our entire planet. It's the human population and the entire ecosystem with regard to the flora and fauna and the bees and everything. And time is of the essence. We feel such an incredible sense of urgency. That is why many times when you hear Russ talk or many of us, we get really fired up about this, because we understand the sense of urgency that accompanies this transition.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no question about that.
So I just wanted to fill you in on, I had a chit-chat with Francis today, hadn't talked to him for a little bit, and as usual, he's just a wonderful man. And Russ, please feel free to pass along his information so this wonderful young lady can get him on her radio show as well. And, Dane and Francis are my go-to guys. I went to Northern California last August and spent some time with them to learn more about this, to understand the scientific end of this. And these guys are my brothers for sure. So I love them very much, and everybody else that's doing whatever they can do within their own towns and villages and cities to build the critical mass that is just so important for our survival.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
It is. Thank you for that input. That's
Thanks so much, Lexi.
key. Mm-hmm.
I will share that info.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Keep
All
going.
right.
Don't stop.
Yeah, you too.
Rock on.
You too. All right, yeah, I call Lexi the glue. She actually helps to bring people together, make contact. She's just been an incredible force in making things happen. So just incredible. It's been great.
It sounds like it. I
Yeah,
want Francis. I want to be able to get in touch with Francis. That's great.
yeah,
That's great. That's the thing. It's like once you start looking at something, I think, the doors start opening. You start checking into things, and if you're heading in the right direction, doors start opening, things start happening. You start meeting people who are bringing you the information that you need, and that's what's happened on this issue. So I know I'm on the right track, and just following the leading of spirit. What am I supposed to do with this? How do I best present this? And I'm hoping and praying and doing it with a wing and a prayer and doing the best I can with creating this, because I'm a volunteer. This is I'm doing this for the love of it. You're not going to hear this on mainstream media because this is a volunteer radio. So, but hopefully we can make an impact. And I can make an impact in a place that isn't getting anything now. So we'll see what happens.
yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, you definitely have a great thing going on there, and I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate this so much because of my suffering from it. I mean, it takes 2 minutes by the time, it takes less than 2 minutes by the time I start smelling it before the inflammation sets in, the headache sets in, the joint pain, the heart pain, the lung pain. It's just constant pain. And it goes up and down with the intensity, because as the plume falls on us, the intensity will go up to full intensity, usually within about 2 minutes. It'll go from mild air to horrible air, and then it takes 45 minutes to an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes before it clears out. It clears out slowly. And just all day long, one plume falls on us, then an hour later, sometimes it's 2 hours later, another plume hits us, another plume hits us. It's been like this. This has been since 2005. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
very bad.
It's time to reverse this.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well,
I don't know about you, but I'm about out of steam. But this has just been absolutely awesome, and I have got so much content I'm not going to know what to do with it all. So this is awesome, and thank you for facilitating this and letting me take the helm here.
well, you got it. Do you want to say closing words? I'll shut off the recorder, and then I'll just I just let people chat after that.
I mean, yeah, whatever. I just just reminding people that if they want to tune in to the broadcast on WRFR.org, the first show with the interviews is going to be this Friday, the 17th, from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. That's Eastern Standard Time, and the show after that, the following Thursday, which is going to put us right about 2 days before this March Against Monsanto. So that's going to be the 23rd, is when the Tribal Vibe radio show is going to be broadcasting, and that's the show that will have music. So I'm finding all these songs to include in this aspect. Plus, I'll be producing snippets of our interviews and from the other show. So that's on the 23rd from 9 a.m. until 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Both shows are on WRFR.org. And if you got any questions or anything, you can also go to my Facebook page, Gypsy Blonde Media. And each of the shows have a website and page and all that jazz. So there's ways to connect, and I can help you do that. And
Awesome.
I'd be happy to do that. So
Perfect.
look forward to having everybody on board.
Well, great. I will thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And you're going to have Dane on there, and that's going to be wonderful.
Yep.
And
looking forward to that.
oh, absolutely. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and terminate the recording, and then I will just open it up. I always let people chat openly after we're done, so anybody who's on the console can keep talking if they want. But it was great meeting you. We had a great conversation originally, and just keep doing what you're doing, and let's get this suffering to stop. And I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you. mean to you? Well, it's, you know, if I had not walked through my own healing gauntlet, I would not have been able to have the compassion for your situation. So I'm thankful for that process where I gained the wisdom to be able to have compassion for your situation so that we can get this issue out there. You know, because it sounds like there's just so much that needs to be addressed, and it's affecting us on all levels. And if we don't stop it, then we stop. And we can't have that. That's not going to work.
No, it's not. It's the same with me. I call it going through the fire. You know, you go through the fire and it makes you a better person. It refines you. And that's, I've been through the fire. So I've learned to have compassion for other people because I know what it's like. So I appreciate that you do too. And many people who are following this issue and involved today understand compassion and understand the value of working together to solve these problems. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to cut the recording off and open up the console for everybody to talk. So it's been great, and I'm sure we will talk again. And I hope everybody wrote down your website so they can go visit, listen to your program, and check out what you've got going on because it's cool. So good night, everybody.